Hello everyone, Gaara here and welcome to my very first artifact video where I talk a little bit more specifically about the game. In this video I will talk about the very basic concepts of artifact. So if you are already familiar with it, or if you're already playing the game, or in any shape or form are a little bit more advanced, yeah, feel free to turn off just now. Yeah, feel free to turn off the video now, because this video is for people that have never played any artifact and are super completely new about the game and just want to get started, because the hype is beginning, because they just entered the hype train. The NDA lifts this upcoming Sunday, which is on the 17th of November. This is also where I will begin to stream Artifact on my Twitch channel. And so if you wanna hear a little bit more in depth and a little bit more rambling about everything, and where you can ask me more questions live, it will be on my Twitch stream. I'll be streaming Artifact every single day starting this Sunday. Also, you can ask me questions in the comments regarding anything that you're curious about. I cannot cover everything in a YouTube video. Keep in mind that these videos should be around 10 to 15 minutes, and I already recorded a video and I try to keep myself short, and it was 1 hour long, and I begin to ramble again at this point. But yeah, just to give it like a little disclosure. So I've been watching the preview tournament last weekend. I also participated in it. I followed the Twitch chat alongside it, and just to see the general public's reaction. And also I've been following the subreddit of Artifact for a few months now, and I can really relate to the community, I feel like, just because I'm hyped for Artifact since they announced it on the last TI, which was September or August of this year. And the first gameplay footage they released was at PAX, and I had no beta access at that point. And I can really relate to how people feel about when they see Artifact for the first time, the gameplay, that they can't get too hyped about it. And I want to focus on that in today's video, why you feel a certain disconnection, even if you watch a video where people explain things pretty well, but you still really can't wrap your mind behind it, and why that is. And also I would really like to talk about why I love this game so much, and why I think this game is awesome and much better than other existing card games. It's more like up to date to current card game standards, and I think this will push card game standards in the future. If you're interested in watching a video like that, please let me know. I will record that before November 17th, but if there's not so much interest in that, I will not do it. And I can completely understand, because I know what people really want to see right now is a beta key. Like the number one thing people want to see right now is like what they're interested in right now is definitely access to the game, and not someone just talk about in-depth strategies about Artifact. And I definitely don't want to do that, and it's also like the reason why I haven't made such videos to this point. So I decided to make this video to just cover the basics of the game and how it is different fundamentally to other card games, and what I would have liked to see before I got my beta access. I got my beta access now for a month and a half, and I'm quite familiar with the game, and I completely understand the frustration of not being able to play the game. And so I'm gonna talk about some things that are very confusing for new players, and why that is so confusing. So let's get started here. I want to mainly talk about this screen, what you see in the background in this video. I will only focus on the fundamentals of the game, the deck size, and overall the progress of a game, and what the objective is of a game, and why you do certain things in a game. So let's get started. What you see here, and this is I think the first point, so what you see here in the background is the initial screen you see when you start a game of Artifact against any opponent. It could be the draft mode, it could be like constructed or whatever. So, and this is already where the disconnection happens, in my opinion. You can't really relate to this in any shape or form, because every card game or any other game you have played so far is so different fundamentally. What you're used to from card games is, it doesn't matter if you played any TCG, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, or if you played Hearthstone. Usually how a card game starts is you see an empty board. And in Artifact, like I said, this is before turn 1 even, you see already things happening on 3 different boards. So if you would only see one board with things on one board, this already looks like a started game. But if you saw things and you see like these crosses on 3 different boards, it looks like this game is ongoing already for many turns. And if you're like a completely new player and you see something like this, then it's so hard to relate to it. And if you watch a stream, you tune in, it always looks like these games are already going on for so long and you have no idea what is going on. So you have to really try to wrap your head around that a game in Artifact starts like this. This is like nothing happened in this game so far. This is before turn 1 of a game. And I will also explain how it comes to this. So the first thing you have to do in Artifact is build a deck. It's a card game. Every deck consists of a minimum of 40 cards. So if you play the draft mode or constructed mode, you play a deck with 5 heroes. This is very unique. Again, another point which you can't really relate to, because we don't have really any card game that has 5 heroes at 3 different board states, and you play on top of it your 40 card deck. On top of it, a deck consists of item cards. So this already is just very, I'm just talking about the super basics of the game here, and this is already very confusing to most people if you have not played a single game of Artifact. If you actually get to play 1 or 2 games of Artifact, you get immediately familiar with the mechanics and how the game works. But for someone who is watching the game for the first time, or someone who's just watching other people play, especially pro player play already on a pretty high level, there's no way you can relate to that. So I will try to help you understand the basics of the game as much as possible. So you build a deck with 40 cards. Most of the time you wanna have only 40 cards in your deck, and the 5 hero cards don't count towards those 40 cards. Every hero card comes with 3 signature cards. And this is the main reason why you decide between different heroes. There's like plenty of different heroes in the game. I think eventually we will have every single Dota champion in Artifact as well. And every single champion or hero comes with signature spells, which are cards that you can only play if you decide to play that hero in your deck. And this is like also the main reason why you decide between one hero or the other. There's 2 reasons. One reason is the color. If you play a hero of the black color, it allows you to play every black spell that exists in the game. So you have to have, like you can see in this screen on the far left side on the first board, you see a black hero from the top player side, and you see on the bottom side of the board a green hero. And the bottom player is going to be able, as soon as the game starts, to play green spells on this board, because he has a green hero on this board, up to 3 mana, because the game begins on 3 mana. Another thing that is so different than other games is you don't start on 1 mana in Artifact, you start at 3 mana. And the biggest disconnection, in my opinion, in this game is, which is so different than any other game, is both players start the game at the same time. And this is why you see so many things already happening on the board. You have the heroes, you have the creeps, they spawn randomly on the boards. I'll get into this a little bit in a bit, how exactly that works. and both players start the game at the same time. So for someone who has never played a single game of Artifact and just sees this, it's so difficult to wrap your head around those basics in this game. You don't start at 1 mana, you have all these different boards, you have 3 different boards to be exact. There's not the same amount of creeps in every lane. Heroes are like spread. This looks already extremely confusing. And as soon as you play, like I said, 1 or 2 games of Artifact, you will understand the concept very, very quickly. But for someone who is just watching, I can completely understand that this is just way too confusing and you basically disconnect after just 5 minutes. So I really want to... But before I get into this board state, I really need to explain how a deck in Artifact is built. So you have your 5 heroes in your deck, and these 5 heroes will come with 15 hero cards that you have to play, but at the same time you usually want to play those hero cards for one reason or another. One reason could be you want to play this hero because he has very powerful basic stat line for combat trading. It's a powerful hero. He doesn't have like such a powerful signature card, and this could be a downside for your deck, because if you want to play a hero with very strong stats, you have to put 3 cards or 3 hero signature cards into your deck from that respective hero, which will overall make your deck weaker because you have to draw, like eventually you will draw these cards in the game. But it could also be that you play a hero which has a very powerful hero signature card. So you will have a hero with like a relative weak stat line, but the reason why you play that hero is because of his hero card. So you want to draw his hero signature card. So you play heroes for very different reasons in your deck. And a deck consists of 40 cards minimum. You play 15 cards automatically in your deck because you decide on 5 heroes that you're gonna play in a game of Artifact, which you're going to play with. Every color has strengths and weaknesses, and this is why you go for color combinations. You might be familiar with the combination of different colors from Magic the Gathering. You have to keep in mind that the lead game designer of Artifact is Richard Garfield, who created Magic the Gathering, who created essentially the TCG genre. He brought some things from his experience in life into Artifact, and the most obvious one is definitely the different colors in the game. So you want to usually mix 2 colors. It's like the most consistent way of approaching the game, to play 2 different colors. The colors are very balanced, and like I said, colors have strengths and weaknesses. For example, the color red has very powerful heroes in terms of stats, but not so powerful spells. So blue has like the weakest heroes, but very powerful spells. So you combine the red color with the blue color to be able to play powerful spells and powerful heroes at the same time. And this is just like a very, very basic concept of how you choose on which heroes you put in your deck and why, and how you build a deck. So you have to put 5 heroes in your deck, then you have automatically 15 hero signature cards in your deck which you draw, and then you add at least an additional 25 cards to your deck, so you have a 40 card deck. On top of it, you have to play at least 9 item cards, because after every round in Artifact there's a shopping phase, and there's like 3 sections in the shop, and the middle section is dedicated to items which you play in your deck. So the bare minimum amount of item cards that you play in your deck are 9 items. So in each shopping phase, 1 item card will be spawned as an option from all the item cards you decided to play in your deck. So if you play a lot of cheap item cards, you have a very, very high chance to get a cheap item card as an option, as a buy option in the shopping phase. So if you play a lot of expensive item cards, and very few cheap item cards, you have a much higher chance to get an expensive item and not be able to spend your gold early. But this is already too advanced in my opinion. But it is important to mention that those are the three things you have to include in your deck to be able to play a game of Artifact. You have to play at least 9 item cards, 40 spells, let's call them spells, and 5 hero cards that come with 15 spells or hero signature cards that you have to include in your deck. So now we have our deck of Artifact, and we chose certain colors for certain reasons and certain heroes for certain reasons. The last thing you do with your deck before it gets like ready to play is choose the order of how you deploy your heroes. And as you can see on this screen behind me, you see 3 hero cards from each player on both sides, but you play 5 hero cards in your deck. And this is why it's important to choose the order of how you deploy your heroes. Because a game of Artifact, as you can see, you have 3 board states, 3 individual boards. And when the game starts, you will have 1 hero in each lane. That's a total of 3 heroes, but you still have 2 heroes remaining. You decide when you build your deck and when you put hero cards in your deck with which 3 heroes you want to start your game of Artifact and which hero you want to have available on turn 2. This is when the 4th hero comes into play. And on turn 3, you will have your final 5th hero available to deploy on a lane. This is something that happens in the deck building stage. When you build a deck, you assess the order of your heroes. So there's like a group of initial heroes you begin your game with, and then there's like the 4th hero which you get to play on turn 2, and then the 5th hero which you get to play on turn 3. This sounds confusing. I know it's very difficult to wrap your head around that as well, but it's very important to understand. And I think this is very, very confusing if you have never played a game of Artifact. But yeah, I just try to explain it as well as possible. And this is the reason why you see already 6 heroes on this board, even though the game hasn't even started yet. So the top player has decided on the Bristleback, which is the hero on the far right, Legion Commander, which is the hero in the top middle, and Solar, which is the hero on the black hero on the far left top side. And the bottom player has decided on Lycan, which is the hero on the bottom left, Luna, which is the hero on the bottom middle, and on Rix, which is the hero on the bottom right. So the 3 initial heroes that you choose to play with, they get placed randomly by the game in a lane. So you cannot decide if you will have your Lycan in the first lane or in the first board or in the second or in the third. This is decided randomly by the game. And I think this is a good thing. So every game feels very different because of how heroes are getting placed on the boards and how many creeps are getting placed in each lane. And so this is the next thing I have to talk about is, besides hero cards, you will also get to play with creeps. Creeps are not cards that you play in your deck. You can play spells that give you creeps, but the game naturally spawns creeps in each lane. The first turn starts with 3 creeps each. It's like the thing with 2 attack and 4 health. This is like just a basic creep. They always have this power. They don't get stronger or anything like that. On the before the game starts, there will be 3 creeps on each player's side, and how these creeps spawn on each board is also complete random. But compared to the biggest difference to the hero deployment is there will always be 1 hero in each lane at the beginning of a game. But creeps could spawn in the same lane, and this is why it looks so confusing. In my opinion, is that you can the top player, you can see here him having 2 creeps next to his hero, and the bottom player doesn't have any creep next to his hero. Now you might ask yourself, why is that? Because it's random how many creeps of those 3 creeps you get on your side on which board state. So RNG has decided for the top player that 2 out of the 3 creeps, as you can see, it's always a total of 3 creeps before turn 1. The 2 creeps are paired with his black hero on the first board, and like I said, it is random if he got the black hero on the first board or the Legion Commander or the Bristleback on the first board. It could be Bristleback with 1 creep on the first board before turn 1. It's complete random. So you have no way to change that. This is like in-game randomness. But keep in mind, this is before turn 1 happens. Both players are able to see this board state, and they can interact with it as soon as turn 1 begins. So, and the bottom player, as you can see, he also has 2 creeps, but for him, those 2 creeps spawned in the middle lane, 1 creep spawned on the far right, and no creep spawned in the left lane. And there's heroes in the game that synergize very well with having creeps next to them, like the Lycan in the first board. Like, he would like to have a creep next to him because he buffs its attack by 2, so the creep would have 4 attack, and if that creep would be paired with another creep from the opponent, it would just take it out on turn 1. But you can't decide on the outcome of how these basic creeps, which are part of the game, spawn on which lane. It happens completely random, and so the game starts with 3 creeps and these 3 heroes, and every turn there will be 2 additional creeps spawning. Again, completely random. There could be 2 creeps spawning in the first lane, in the second lane or third lane. There could be 1 creep in the first lane and 1 creep in the second lane, but the amount doesn't change. The game starts with 1 hero in each lane from both players and 3 creeps total from both players. And from the videos that I've seen and watched so far, there's not enough emphasis on that, and I think this is very important to understand. I think this lifts a lot of the confusion of when you watch a game for the first time, that what the frick is happening in here on this picture. So the game hasn't started yet. Both, like I said, so this is like basically the first board scenario, board state for both players. Both players see this board state. Both players play the first turn at the same time, so there's no one player goes first, one player goes second. Both players play at the same time, and this is very awesome. And this is one big issue card games or outdated card games have, is that the first player usually have an advantage. The first player is the first one to play something proactively, and the second player always has to react to my action when I go first. And in Artifact, they solve that by letting both players play at the first turn at the same time, also to counterbalance the RNG. So one player will could have 3 creeps with a powerful hero in one lane, and the other player could have 0 creeps in that lane. So one player will lose that board state by default, right? Because one player has all these creeps and a hero, and you only have a hero. But this is why and this is where you can start to see the importance of 3 different board states. Because if one player has a board state with 3 creeps and a hero and is winning, automatically you will also have a board with 3 creeps or 2 creeps and a hero in another board. As you can see in this picture, in the middle lane, the bottom player has a hero and 2 creeps in the middle lane, and the top player has only 1 creep and 1 hero in the middle lane. The top player has an advantage on the first lane because he has 2 creeps and 1 hero, and I only have 1 hero. And the bottom player has a slight advantage on the third lane, at least in theory, because I have 1 creep and 1 hero in that lane, and you only have 1 hero. So even though you have the RNG aspect of randomness on both player sides, you have a natural counterbalance, because if you have if one player has a good outcome on one board, the other player will have automatically a good outcome of another on one of his boards. So this has two big upsides. This way of beginning a game has two huge upsides compared to other card games. It keeps every single game extremely fresh and interesting, because you will rarely have two games play out the same way, just because of how random the initial board states are. Like, if you go over all the possible combinations, like which hero will be on which lane facing which hero of the opponent, so even if you play the same decks against each other, every single game will feel so differently from the previous one. You don't get destroyed by, like, you don't get owned by RNG with bad outcomes, because if I have a good outcome on one board, you will automatically have a good outcome on your board. This is, I think, a very clever way of using RNG in card games. We don't have the downside of some player having an advantage of going first. You have the RNG aspect of keeping things very fresh and interesting, and you have a natural game balance. You have a natural balance, self-balance in the game. Hopefully you understand now how this board state occurred before the game even started. Hopefully you learned why you play certain heroes in your deck, why you made a decision to play a certain hero in your deck, and why this looks so confusing, but once you get to play it, that you understand that this is not confusing. This is just something that you can't relate to, because there's no game that is even close to similar to this. And I hope that you will give the game at least a chance to try it out for yourself. So the next thing I want to talk about is, how do you win a game of Artifact? It is very important. Now you queued your deck into a specific game mode. If it's draft or constructed, it doesn't really matter. The games will feel very similar. It's just that the biggest difference in constructed to draft is that your deck will be refined. Your strategy will be more refined, because you choose specifically from your entire card pool specific heroes and specific spells to achieve certain strategies of winning the game, compared to draft mode, where you're just given random cards and you're basically trying to make the best out of those cards that you have been given. That's like the main difference between those two modes. So you win a game of Artifact by killing these towers that you can see, which have 40 HP. There's 3 towers in total on both sides, and to win a game you have to reduce the total HP of a tower from 40 to 0. But there's a different way to win in Artifact. Is once you kill one of these towers, there will be an ancient spawning that replaces the tower, and that ancient will have 80 HP. You can win a game also by killing one tower and then the ancient afterwards, but mathematically it's easier to kill 2 towers which have only 40 HP than killing one tower that has 40 HP and then the ancient afterwards which has 80 HP, because it's twice as much as a regular tower. So this is another thing which is super interesting in Artifact compared to other games. If you compare to Pokemon TCG, where you have these prize cards, so once you obtain the prize cards you win the game, or like any card game like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you have like your starting 8,000, where you have the starting health, a starting point of 8,000 health points, and once you reduce these to 0 you lose a game. In Artifact there's 2 clear different ways of winning. You can win one board extremely hard and win the game through that, or you win 2 out of 3 boards and win through that. So this keeps the game so extremely interesting, because like on a high level you will constantly switch between those options. Like if you're like trying to win either on 2 boards or just trying to go for that ancient kill on a third board. But this is something I will talk about in the future in some of my videos, where I go more in depth on like efficient strategies and whatnot. So this is like just the basics of how you win the game. And how do you kill a tower? Like, what do you do? So as you can see, let's take the first board state as an example. So I happen to get my black, like the top player happened to get his the top player happened to get the black hero on this first board and 2 creeps, and the bottom player happened to get 1 hero there. So as you can see, if you can block anything in Artifact, a creep or a hero, with your own hero or your own creeps. There's like spells in the game that give you creeps, and you can use these creeps to block attacks. And the reason why you do that is so that your tower doesn't take damage. At the same time, you want to take out the opponent's hero and the opponent's creeps, so you have free way to the tower to destroy that tower. So the game evolves around destroying the opponent's tower, essentially. How you achieve that is up to you as a player. There's many different ways to destroy the opponent's tower. If nothing is blocking your hero or your creep, you will deal direct tower damage. In the first board, as an example, if nothing changes in this board state. So let's talk, before we get into how do we how do we destroy a tower, is how does one turn play out, very basic in a game of Artifact. You have these 3 boards. So this is before turn 1 starts. When does turn 1 start? So the game will so this is basically what both players see. Like these creeps spawn randomly on their lanes, and the heroes spawn randomly, which you chose to play initially on turn 1. And then both players draw 5 cards. And this is another very important point I want to talk about, is there is no mulligan in Artifact. In my opinion, that's a good thing. When I first got into the game, I thought that was a bad thing, because I really enjoyed the mulligan system in other card games, just for consistency. You play cards that you want to play early, if it is removal cards or cheap minions, creatures, whatever card game you play. And you can draw, just because of the nature of draw RNG, just a bunch of very expensive cards which you can't play early. And because they require you to have little mana, or however or whatever game you are playing, so you can't play them early. So you have a mulligan option of putting them back in your deck and redrawing new cards, just to increase the odds of having playable cards at the beginning of the game. In Artifact, you don't have a mulligan system, so you are gonna play with the cards you draw. And every single turn from that point on, you draw 2 cards. Both players draw 2 cards. And that actually counterbalances the draw RNG. I think drawing 2 cards per turn is a very interesting mechanic. And removing the mulligan from a card game is also very interesting. What it really does is it forces people to not play too greedy decks. Once you get into the game, you will realize that with every single turn and every single mana increase, the cards become exponentially more powerful. So the cards in Artifact that cost 8 or 9 mana are so powerful that they will just end the game. Like, you have already seen some of the cards. Like, if you look at the green cards, if you look at the 8 mana Thunder Pack, it has 14 attack and 14 HP, and for 9 mana you get a 25. It's almost like the double the amount of stats just 1 turn later. Artifact, every single turn has like a lot of decisions, but at the same time the game is relatively fast, just because how exponential the growth of power level is per mana cost. So with 6 mana you can already cast some of the most powerful spells in the game, and this is essentially on turn 3 in the actual game. So after playing the game for a while, I really like that there's no mulligan. So like my first decks that I played in the game, I played a lot of very expensive, powerful cards, but you realize very quickly that you really can't afford to draw them early, because you will lose the game because you draw them and you just can't play them. You need to be able to answer whatever your opponent is doing from the get-go. But this is already too in-depth. If you wanna learn more advanced strategies about the game, feel free to tune in this Sunday when I'm gonna begin streaming Artifact, and yeah, just explain everything as well as I can, and hopefully build some cool decks together with you guys. So the next thing I want to talk about is gold. If you look at the top right and the bottom left, the top right and the bottom right, you can see both players start the game at 0 gold. How do you obtain gold in a game of Artifact? Well, you get gold by killing creeps and by killing heroes. Like I mentioned earlier, you will you start a game of Artifact with 3 creeps on both player sides, and there will be 2 creeps spawning in randomly on different boards on each player side as well. Very similar to a MOBA game like Dota 2, just that it is random where the creeps spawn. So if you kill a creep from the opponent, creeps can also be casted or summoned on by spells. For example, as an example, the green color and the blue color have many creature or minions or creeps or whatever you want to call them spells, and you get more powerful creeps for a higher mana cost, obviously. So if you have a creature for 6 mana, a spell that costs 6 mana, you have like a more powerful creature than if you cast a creature or summon a creature for 3 or 4 mana. But the amount of gold you obtain by destroying that creature will always be 1 gold. So every time you kill any creep, any creature, it will always be 1 gold. Very important. If you kill a hero, it nets you 5 gold. So 5 times the amount of killing a creature. So you have to kill 5 creatures. If you do some maths, so you get the same amount of gold of killing 1 hero once as clearing the opponent's board from the initial 3 creeps, and then on turn 2, when he gets 2 new creeps and you kill those as well, it has the same value as killing a hero once. And this is where you immediately see the importance of killing a hero over like creeps. But like why it's this is one of the many reasons why killing a hero is good. Another reason is, why do you have a hero in a lane in the first place? Well, a hero allows you to play a spell from the representative color. So if you if you take this board state here as an example, the top player can play spells of a mana cost up to 3 on the top lane on the first board, because he has a black hero in the first on the first board, and the bottom player can play green spells on the bottom lane for up to 3 mana on turn 1, just because you start a game of Artifact with 3 mana. So if you kill a hero from the opponent, you don't just get 5 gold, which is quite a lot. The very first cheap item that improves your heroes, it costs 3 gold in Artifact. And every potion, also like the first potions, the first utility items, the first items or upgrades for your heroes cost 3 gold. So kind of like the first objective in the game on turn 1 is to obtain 3 gold or more. And if you manage to kill a hero, you get 5 gold. That's quite a lot. And if you, let's say, if you kill a creep on the first turn and you kill an opponent's hero on the first turn, you already have 6 gold. And with 6 gold in the first shopping phase, if you build, let's say, a deck with a bunch of cheap items, you will be able to buy a potion for 3 gold and able to buy an item for 3 gold, let's say. Like the first health item gives a hero +4 health if you equip it. If you look at a hero card, you will see that there's 3 slots above the portrait. So the first slot is kind of like a sword. This represents the attack item slot. The middle slot represents an armor item slot, and the right slot represents a health item slot. So every hero has these 3 slots. You can equip an attack item, an armor item, and a health item. 3 items total on every single hero that is in your deck. So it is a total amount of 15 items you can equip on your heroes. You can replace an item by another item if you choose to do so. Let's say you buy a cheap attack upgrade for 3 gold in the beginning of the game. After turn 1 you obtain 3 gold somehow, and then you buy a cheap sword, and then you equip a hero. Very basic. Your hero has 4 attack, you have a +2 attack sword, and then your hero will have 6 attack. Very easy to understand. But later in the game you have a lot of gold, you buy a better item, let's say +4 attack sword, then you are able to replace the cheap sword with the +4 attack sword. But you will not get like a gold refund or anything. The already equipped item will just be simply destroyed or replaced by the new item. So you have these basic heroes, and the way to improve them is by equipping them with an attack item, a health item, and an armor item. And the first health item upgrade for 3 gold in Artifact gives you already +4 health on any hero you equip it with. And if you look at the blue hero on in the middle, which is Luna, it has 8 health and 3 attack. And if you would equip that hero with the basic health upgrade, it would have 12 health already, which is a 50% health increase. And this is the very first, this is a very basic health upgrade. So something that you're really trying to do in Artifact is kill the opponent's heroes, kill the opponent's creeps, and get as much gold as you can, because then you increase the power of your heroes, and it will be even easier to take out the opponent's creeps and the opponent's heroes, and just make the board clear so you can attack the opponent's tower and then win the game. So as you can see, I'm just explaining the basics here, but it is already getting quite overwhelming with informations. There's like these items that you're trying to obtain, which you can equip your hero with to make it stronger. You have these different lanes. But once you understand these fundamentals, I think you really only have to play like 2 or 3 games of Artifact to, you know, get into to really get the feeling for those basic fundamentals. And this is something that you cannot get behind with, in my opinion, if you have not actually played the game, no matter how well someone explains it to you. So all I can say is don't worry about it, and that the game is really not that hard. It doesn't have that crazy, it's not that hard to get into if you are a completely new player. It's very similar to when you play a MOBA for the first time. For the very first time. I don't know if you remember your first time, if you ever played. It can be quite overwhelming. But once you get used to it, even 5-year-olds can play it. So now we know that a hero, so at this point in time, so in this point of the video, you should know how do we build a deck in Artifact? Why do we build a deck in Artifact? What do we see here on this board? What is happening here? And there's gold in the game. And I'm not even gonna talk about the timer. The timer is also quite interesting and important because like in Artifact you have a time bank, which again, in my opinion, is very good to have in card games, because everyone knows like there's this player that just takes forever for every single turn to decide. And in Artifact, as soon as it's your turn, uh, your time back starts to go down, and you are given the amount of time for decisions according to your time bank and how much time you want to waste per turn. But in a very basic game of Artifact, you will have plenty of time per turn. This is only something that becomes relevant in tournament play or when you become a more advanced player. But for new players, this is absolutely no issue, except you want to spend like 6 or 7 minutes on every turn. Then this could be quite a problem for you. So how does a turn of Artifact play out? So in most games, if you're familiar with a card game like Magic the Gathering, is you have the draw phase, which is the same in Artifact. It happens at the same time, like I mentioned before. Both players draw 2 cards at the beginning of the game at the same time. Each turn, you start with your initial cards, there's no mulligan, and you start the first turn on the first board. So the game zooms in and then you play the first board. You can always zoom out to have an overview of the free board states, just to look how things are paired against each other, what your creeps are facing, what your heroes are facing, what your opponent has, and yeah, so you can just take a look at that. But so you start the game on the first board. What can you do now? On the example that is shown on the screen behind me, you see these 5 cards in my hand. You can see the mana cost of every card on the top left. So the very first card on the furthest on the left shows a 3 in the top left corner. It means this card costs 3 mana, and so it has a green color, which means I need a green hero in a lane, and I need to have 3 mana to cast this spell. This spell is an improvement, which means it can be casted on any lane if you have a hero in any lane. So we start the game, it zooms in on lane 1. Both players are able to play cards. Now it comes down to the second thing. Now there's something that you might have already heard before if you were reading on Reddit or watched like a preview tournament or anything like that. It's called initiative. What does initiative mean? Initiative is something that changes every time someone does an action. So the very, very first initiative is decided randomly. Whoever player gets to play the first card from their hand is decided randomly. It could be that in this scenario, in this case here on this board, the bottom player has initiative for the very, very first action. And usually on the very first turn, the very, very first action doesn't have too crazy of an impact on the outcome of the game or anything like that. So this is, I think, a very great way to remove the going first advantage in any card game. Because whoever has the very, very first initial action of who gets to play the very first card has a very, very minor impact on the outcome of the game, close to 0. I would go as far as saying almost 0. So in this case here, the bottom player has the option to pass, and whenever you pass and the opponent, you have initiative, so you're allowed to play the first card. So on the first board state, the bottom player is allowed to play the first card from their hand. So I have 3 mana because the game starts at 3 mana. If you look at my hand, I have a green card that costs 3 mana. I could now play, now the game of Artifact starts, it's turn 1, first board. I can now play this green card from my hand. Because it's an improvement, I don't want to get into it too much, what kind of card this is, but you could play this on any board, in the middle or on the far right. Because that's like another cool thing, that there's cards in the game where you can impact other boards, and this is another very fun aspect of the game. So the first player has initiative, it's decided randomly. I can choose to play this card. So I decide to play this card on the first board. I have no more mana, I spent my 3 mana, the game starts with 3 mana, the card costs 3 mana, and then I pass. Whenever you press this button, this golden button, then your time bank stops and the opponent's time bank starts. It's his turn for an action, so now he can play a card if he decides to do so. So there's the drawing phase, and then there's like the main phase 1, which is this is how it's called in most card games. A main phase where you're able to play cards from your hand. And then there's a combat phase, and combat phase happens at the same time, where the top lane interacts with the bottom lane. So on the first board state, you will see that my hero, it is always like, there's always like a preview before the combat phase. If the board stays like this, what is going to happen in the combat phase? So if we both pass, we both don't choose to play a card, then my green hero on the bottom lane will take out the melee creep on the top lane side. Your black hero on the top lane side will attack my tower because there's no creep that blocks it. And the second melee creep on the furthest left will also attack my tower because there's nothing that blocks it. So it is a combined of 10 attack power, the hero and the unblocked creep. So my tower will take 10 damage already on turn 1. Why is it taking 14 damage? It's because of the hero's passive ability. If it is not blocked, it will deal an additional 4 siege damage. But again, this is already like too advanced. I just want to explain why you can see a 14 on the screen. It's because of the hero ability. So this, if this board stays like this and no player decides to play a card, or could be for many reasons, you didn't draw a card that you can play. But most of the time, a turn 1 plays out like this. You get to play 1 or 2 cards that you can play. They don't have like too crazy of an impact on the outcome of the game. There will be more options available as the game progresses. So past turn 2, turn 3, where once you get to deploy all your heroes in all these different lanes, you have more creeps, you have more mana, you draw more cards. You will have way more options to take out opponent's creeps, heroes, obtain gold, buy items, attack the tower, deal damage, and so forth. And once you both pass, you either play a card, you can decide to not play a card, but if you decide to play a card, the opponent gains initiative on the next board state. So if I play a card, I pass the initiative to you. If you play a card, the initiative goes back to me. If I play a card, you don't play a card, and then we enter the combat phase, the trades happen, and then the main phase of the second board begins. But because you didn't play a card on the first board, you will have initiative on the second board. That means that you will get to play the first card on the second board. And that's how it's decided. It's another aspect of the game that you play for. You can decide on not playing cards and always getting to play the first card on the next board by like passing cards, or there's also cards in the game that have the card text gain initiative. So you play a card and you will still have initiative because that's what the card does. So very interesting. There's many different ways. This is why I love playing this game so much. Also, if you guys are interested in that, I want to explain in a different video why I think Artifact is a much better card game than other existing card games, why I enjoy it so much. Please let me know if this is something you would be interested in. Like I said, the combat, so both players passed on board 1, combat phase happens, then immediately you go to the middle board, deciding, depending on who played the last card, one player will have initiative and gets to play the first. That's initiative sounds maybe like a complicated word, but all it really means is who gets to play the first card. And everything that you have in your hand is a card. If it's an item or a spell or a creep, an improvement, whatever it is, except a hero. If you deploy a hero, that's not an actual card that you play. So on the second board state, both players, get to play spells. If you don't play spells, then in the main phase, both players pass. Then the combat phase happens, and then the trades happen like it's displayed on the screen. it always shows when someone buffs in a hero's attack or protects a hero or whatever. There will always be a preview on the board that shows you what is going to happen once you enter the combat phase. And then once that combat phase happens, you go to the next board, which is the third board. The same thing there. Every board is basically played the same way. It's just that it's a different board state because you have a different hero in that lane and a different amount of creeps. And once that combat phase happens, one player will have initiative on turn 2 on the first board, depending on how the third board played out. And on turn 2, you start turn 2 with the shopping phase. So the little book opens in the middle of the screen. So if you killed opponent's heroes or creeps, you will have an amount of gold. In this example that is displayed here, if no player plays any cards from hand and everyone just passes, the bottom player will take out one creep from the top player on the first lane. The top player will take out one creep from the bottom player in the middle lane. And the top player will take out the bottom hero on the bottom lane. So the top player will have 6 gold available in the first shopping phase, and the bottom player will have only 1 gold in the first shopping phase. So the top player will have a big advantage because he can already buy 2 cheap items, like an item and a potion, let's say. And the bottom player can't buy anything because the cheapest item in the game costs 3 gold. There is the shopping phase, and then on turn 2, before turn 2 starts, the 2 creeps spawn always. It is always displayed where the creeps will go. Like I mentioned earlier, it will be decided randomly where the creeps go. But you see as a player, it is displayed where they will go. And according to that, you can deploy your hero on one of the 3 boards. So for the 4th hero and the 5th hero, you as a player can decide. It's not random on which board you want to play that hero or place that hero. And this is like and then your mana increases by 1. The second draw phase happens. Both players draw 2 cards, and a turn plays out again. So this is the very basic fundamentals of how you go. So this is the very basic fundamentals and concepts of the game, how you go from building a deck to playing the first turn of Artifact. I hope this was somehow helpful to some of you new players. I will try to answer as many questions as you have in the comments below. Also, my very first stream, one more time, will be this Sunday on the 17th when the NDA lifts. Open beta is in 1 week from now, so everyone with a beta key will be able to play, and in 2 weeks from now, everyone will be able to play who purchased the game. Thanks so much for watching. Hope this was helpful to you. See you guys next time. I love you all, and peace out.